The Cartoonerific podcast is sponsored by the Wonderful World of Animation Gallery, home of rare and wonderful fine animation art. Visit their website at wwagallery.com. And for our Cartoonerific listeners, you will receive a special 10% discount off any purchase if you purchase by March 25th, 2024. Just go to wwagallery.com and enter code CARTOON10 for your 10% discount. Once again, this discount is only valid until midnight, March 25th, 2024. Once again, visit wwagallery.com.
The following is a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
It's Cartoonerific. Cartoonerific. It's Cartoonerific. With your host Brian Mitchell.
Well, hello, this is Brian Mitchell, and I am your host of the Cartoonerific Classic Animated Cartoon Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Last week we had Mike Milo, the first of two parts, where he talks about his schooling in New Jersey, and then working in Manhattan, and then going out to Los Angeles and working for Warner Brothers and working on short cartoons and other fun stuff. This week, we're going to be talking about more of the same, but we're also going to be talking about the industry in general, his recent work on Woody Woodpecker, and a possible dream project or two. So that should be a lot of fun. Next week, we're going to have on the man behind the Mighty Magiswords, which was a Cartoon Network show that I thought was pretty fun. And anyway, his name is Kyle A. Carrozza. He's also a musician. He does a bunch of funny songs. He's often featured on the Dr. Demento radio show, and he's going to be on talking about his career, and that's going to be a real cool interview. So stay tuned for that.
And now, it's time for Cartoonerific News.
Well, I just noticed something. It's making its way through all the social media about Disney revamping its 2D animation department. It almost sounds like a dream come true to all the people that love hand-drawn animation. And then it's being tied in with a show that's on Disney Plus called Sketchbook, where they talk with a bunch of different cartoonists. Mark Henn is one of them, Eric Goldberg. And as they talk with them, they're demonstrating how to draw a certain character. And it's a very entertaining show. Watched a couple of episodes of it so far. I plan on watching them all. I think there's about 6 in total. But I'm a little bit of a skeptic as far as the 2D animation department goes. Part of this story has to do with them hiring 6 young people to train them in 2D animation. I think the reality is 2D animation has never really gone away at Disney, even though they completely gutted their animation departments. They held on to a couple of people. Those people, like I said, Eric Goldberg, Mark Henn, Randy Haycock, who I worked with years ago at Warner Brothers. Those people, plus maybe a few others, are there, and I don't know if they're really revamping the entire animation department. It's probably not going to be what it was, but it will probably come back in some other form if that does happen. And as you know, and I don't know if, well, actually, a lot of people may not be aware of this, but Moana actually had hand-drawn animation in it, and there have been Disney theme park projects that were done with hand-drawn animation, a lot of them involving Eric Goldberg, and who's a wonderful, wonderful animator. So, only time will tell. We'll see what happens in the future. I think it's noteworthy. Like I said, that show, Sketchbook, on Disney Plus is an excellent show. It only goes about 22 minutes, and like I said, it's about 6 episodes. I was easily able to watch 2 in one sitting. It's just a real fascinating show. Anyway, we have Mike Milo coming up in just a minute. Please stay tuned. Thank you.
Cartoonerific is the place to be to celebrate hand-drawn animated cartoons. The Cartoonerific podcast features interviews with the magic makers behind your favorite animated cartoons, with episodes uploaded every Friday. Or visit the Cartoonerific blog featuring articles about classic cartoon animation. At the Cartoonerific Gallery, view original animation art and memorabilia from your favorite animated films and TV shows. The company store features exclusive swag from the Cartoonerific universe. And coming soon, brand new world premiere cartoons on the Cartoonerific channel. It's all here. Join the fun at www.cartoonerific.com. That's cartoon, ERIFIC.com. It's Cartoonerific, saving the universe one funny cartoon at a time. And now it's time for our special Cartoonerific guest.
Well, as promised, here is part 2 of the Mike Milo interview. It's a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoy. The one thing I wanted to say before was we were talking about getting into studios and stuff. You apply to studios, and people get rejected. And, you know, you have, I think at Disney, they had like a board of like 10 people. You know, it used to be the 9 old men reviewed everything. That was back in the 70s and 60s. And then, but like at Disney, you know, maybe when they had the feature film, the hand-drawn animation, they had all the top people over there. And I used to say to people, you know, if they get bad news in the morning, you know, they have a screening in the morning, and the screening doesn't go well, and they all get ripped, right? They all get chewed out at the screening. And now they have an appointment to come in and sit down and look at portfolios at lunch. Do you really think that they're going to be in a mood, like in a good mood, to like review these portfolios? And that's the thing. You know, if somebody has a bad bowl of Fruit Loops, and I'm not giving a plug to Kellogg's here, but but that can happen. You know. You come in, you just really, you know, you had a hangover from the night before, and you come in, it's like, it's all crap, you know?
Yep.
And that's, and it's the same thing with pitching shows, you know? You have a good idea, you go in, and sometimes they're giddy. They might have gotten a raise, and they look at stuff, and, you know, they're looking at your stuff more favorably. But if they had a bad night and they're coming in and now they're looking at this stuff and it's just like, you know, they don't even want to look at it, you know?
Yep.
So
I know that's the thing about our business. It's all subjective.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, I guess there are other subjective jobs, but, you know, like an accountant, his job is to do 2 + 2 = 4. It's never 5, but in animation, it might add up to 5 because we're being wacky and it's different. And I've had 13 development deals over the last 25 years.
Wow.
And I've made a number of pilots, and I've never been able to actually sell a series. And it frustrates me to no end, especially now when I look at the utter garbage that you see them putting on Netflix and some like streaming apps. And it's just crap.
Right.
There's no doubt it isn't crap. There's some great stuff on there without question. But you know, they need so much content that they're just like looking in the bottom barrel of like, who's made what? What can we do? What can we do?
Right.
And it's really frustrating because every time I ever pitch something, the reason that it got ultimately canceled had to do with politics, not with the idea.
Right.
Everybody was always excited about it. Then the person that was my champion gets fired or leaves for a better job. And then now the new person, just like anybody, comes in and destroys everything the old guy did, because otherwise, if it does well, then they look bad. And, you know, they don't get the accolades. And
do you remember a movie called The Secret of Nim? It's a Don Bluth picture. It's a great movie, right?
Yeah.
And UA, it was released, basically UA, United Artists, picked up the movie. and they were very, very high on that movie.
Yeah.
And in the middle of that movie being made, and UA was starting to promote it, and there was a movie called Heaven's Gate. And Heaven's Gate was a United Artists picture, and it was like one of the biggest bombs ever, and it sunk United Artists.
Is that the one with Warren Beatty?
I think it was Michael Cimino directed it. It's really...
I'm talking about the guy that was... Oh, no, not Heaven's Gate. I don't remember. Though I'm thinking about the one with Warren Beatty, and he dies. He plays Piccolo. He goes up to heaven, and then he gets to come back. But now he's a different person, and he tries to get all the... Chris Rock made almost the exact same film.
Wasn't it Heaven Can Wait? Is that what
Maybe
you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, actually, Chris Rock might have made a remake of it.
I'm sure he did, because that
it was
seems
good,
to be...
too. They were both very good films.
Well,
I liked them.
But
I guess that's not it. Heaven's Gate.
No, Heaven's Gate. So this picture came out and it was a big bomb. It just it cost a lot to make, and it tanked. And so UA basically became part of MGM. It was MGM UA.
Right.
And the new management that came in didn't want to do anything with the Secret of NIMH. Basically, they kind of killed it.
Warner Brothers did that to Iron Giant. Same thing. It was the same thing. They gave Brad Bird the carte blanche just so that he would come and make a film. He started making the film. They started watching. They were like, and he said, well, I'll make the film as long as there's no, and maybe I'm not saying this exactly right, but the story that I understand.
No interference.
They said, we don't, as long as you don't interfere and you just let me make the film, I'll do it. They're like, yes. And then they saw that it was really good. And the executives were afraid that now, people can make things without executives? Yes, we can. But they didn't like that. And I guess the higher ups would have thought something about that. And they ended up just putting it out there with no advertising and no, commercials or nothing. And
I remember at the time they kept blaming the head of publicity, which I think the name was Brad Ball. I think pretty sure that's what the name was. And so everybody just came down on this guy, and I'm like, the guy did not drop the ball. This came from higher up. This was
without a doubt. That's not his job.
Yeah, Quest for Camelot came out, and I think Quest for Camelot bombed. That was a Warner Brothers picture, and they probably were already into this with Iron Giant, and they probably felt let's put it right to home video,
You're probably right.
And that's what happened. And it happens all the time. A Christmas Story. Remember Christmas Story? It's a huge movie now, Yeah. But at the time it came out, it was a bomb. Picture bomb. It was at the same period when MGM acquired UA. And so same type of thing happened.
Yeah.
But what are you working on now? What are you doing now?
I am I'm directing. My title isn't showrunner, but I'm more than just the director. I'm kind of running the creative end of a third season of some Woody Woodpecker cartoons that for Universal that are going to be released on YouTube.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Now,
it's the third season. I only did the second and third season. First season was done by somebody else, but they've been a lot of fun. They're only 5-minute cartoons, and there's 10 of them, and it's been a lot of fun. So I'm doing that. That goes until August, and then I'm doing freelance on the side,
right?
Always, and looking for what's next because you got to. I don't know. Once this ends, it's just done. There's no, hey, let's do a fourth season, because the way that these cartoons make their money is not like the way most of them do. It makes money based on the revenue it generates on YouTube. So it is specifically tied to how much people like it. And it takes, it just doesn't come overnight. It takes a while to do it. And we did season 2. We started post right when they locked us down of last season.
Right.
And so this season, I think I started in November. So it's about 8 months worth of work, but I love it.
Are you working remotely on this? I mean,
yeah.
Is everybody working remotely now? I mean, how is this?
Yep. Yeah, we're well, oddly enough, one of the things that I loved about it when I got the job, it's at a company called Splash Entertainment, which is in Woodland Hills, and I'm in Woodland Hills, and it's walking distance. It's literally 3 blocks from my house, and I thought, oh, this would be great. I could lose a little weight, get a little exercise in, and then they locked us down. I'm stuck 3 blocks away from the coolest job I've had. So,
wow. I worked, when I originally started off in the business, I was living over at the Lakeside Apartments over in Toluca Lake, where I think everybody's been through. I think everybody has to kind of stay there for at least 6 months when they come out to Los Angeles. Right. And so I was over there, and I was like within walking distance of Warner Brothers and Deke Studios, because I worked at Deke. And then Don Bluth's West Coast operation from Ireland was across from NBC. So I could literally just get out and walk over there. And if I wanted to, if I jumped the fence, I could be in where they used to shoot the old Three Stooges comedies.
Right. Well, because Universal is right down the street from there to the left.
Yeah, I can walk down there too. And yeah. And
that's what that is a great location. If you're trying to be in animation, just simply because that's where it all is. It's funny that Warner Brothers eventually moved across the street from where Bluth studio was. They tore it all down, and now it's a Whole Foods, and and it's right across the street from what used to be Warner Brothers Music. Now I don't think now they're building a building next door because they bought the NBC lot, and they're building a giant Fortress of Solitude looking building, the big white building that they're gonna make, and that's gonna be animation.
Wow.
But that all happened right as COVID hit, so I don't know what the plan is now, because nobody really wants to go back to work. I mean, you want to see your friends, and sure, it's nice to have lunches. That was always one of the most fun parts about being in the business, was just having lunch with friends. But at the same time, Los Angeles is just terrible for traffic. And, when I was at Warner Brothers, if there was no traffic, it would take me 20 minutes. But there was never no traffic, except for on Jewish holidays and stuff. Then nobody was there, but we didn't get Jewish holidays off, so I had to go to work anyway. So that was really nice, you know. And but otherwise, it was an hour and a half to work every day, and road rage. And just like you were saying before, when you had a bad day, a bad Fruit Loops, I got to go in and start making people laugh, and I just want to put my fist through a window.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of people cutting me off, and it's gotten worse and worse.
For people listening, Sherman Oaks, basically to Burbank, is probably about, with no traffic, about
15 miles.
15 minutes.
Yeah, it's not very far.
It's not far at all.
It's very far with bumper to bumper traffic, and then people weaving in and out, cutting you off, which causes accidents. Yeah, there's a lot of selfish people on the roads here. Yeah,
it's infuriating sometimes when you're driving. And I just remember going from Burbank to the Sherman Oaks Galleria, and we were up in the Imperial Bank building working.
Right.
And it would take me about 35 minutes to get there. And it's 5 miles. It's 5 miles, and and I was right off the freeway ramp there, so I could just basically get on, sail down, and Imperial Bank building was right there. It was basically 2 blocks from, was it the Ventura Freeway?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The 101. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would take side streets because I didn't like sitting in traffic. I could not handle sitting in traffic. I'd rather go and then sit at a light and then go and try to barrel down Riverside. Yeah. And every day going to work and coming back from work, you go through and you're going through Studio City, and I would always pass by that guy who played Seinfeld's father. I'm trying to think what his name is. He passed away now, but I passed by him every day. He'd be driving this big ass Cadillac. Looking straight ahead with his arms straight out, almost like with blinders on because he wore these thick glasses.
Yeah.
Guy, I'm gonna have to look up his name. But anyway, it was always funny, and I always wanted to wave to him. Hey,
Yeah.
hey, pal.
That's one of the kind of cool things. You do get to see celebrities here. I've seen a lot of celebrities over the years just passing by. I went to the Magic Castle once, and I saw Jason Sudeikis there.
Oh, wow.
This wasn't too long ago. It was just before the lockdown. Jason Sudeikis and his wife, I don't remember what his wife was now. I don't remember what. Olivia Wilde. The two of them were there.
Oh, wow. So,
good.
two big questions, all right?
Sure.
Okay, so if you had your dream project, if you had your ultimate dream project, somebody gave you, Elon Musk gave you $1 gazillion and he said, I want you to do something that you had your heart set on, what would that be?
Well, that's a hard question to answer, just at least for me, because I have had, like I said, I've had 13 development deals. So I have a lot of ideas that are near and dear to my heart. I think one of my favorites, though, was a cartoon that I did called Flavio. And it was about a dishwashing Italian goat that wanted to be more than just a dishwasher. He wanted to be a great inventor like his hero, Leonardo da Vinci, who would appear to him and give him advice. And I really liked that. And a lot of people liked it. And it was pretty...
That's very funny. It's really offbeat.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. And they ended up picking some other, because it was part of the shorts program, and they ended up picking something else. And the reason that they picked it was simply because they wanted 3D. And they told me that the reason that they passed on it was because it was too much like SpongeBob. And they were actively saying out loud that they were looking for the next SpongeBob.
Right.
And they said, no, it's too much like SpongeBob. And so anyway, it was well received.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
And it was also a nice, I eventually put it up online, and it's gotten a lot of really good responses to the effect of, boy, this is when Nickelodeon actually made good cartoons. I wish they made this into a series.
Yeah.
So I would probably do that. But that's just one of them. I have so many ideas. I have an idea, a post-apocalyptic idea I have right now. And I'm planning on writing that. But I don't have any illusions that anything's going to ever happen with it, just simply because, honestly, because I think I'm too old. You just have to be young and to sell things now, at least in animation. And I just don't see it happening. But yeah, if I had $1 gazillion...
I'm sorry, that is kind of the thinking, right? They want the young...
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which I think is dumb, because the older you get, the more experiences you have. You don't know anything when you're in your 20s. I didn't. Right. I mean, you think you do. And maybe you could be funny, and maybe, there are breakout people that are geniuses. But why cut off anybody with experience? I think I'm a lot funnier now than I was when I was young. So it seems silly to just throw out half of the population just because you have a little gray hair, Yeah, I mean, good ideas come from a lot of different places, and a good idea is a good idea. It shouldn't be, they're looking at the person. Yeah, exactly. They should be looking at the idea, yeah. So that happens, I the way you kind of willed yourself into the business, because you decided, well, I'll try cartoons, and then you decided you liked it, and then you really started going for it. You started making stuff. Yeah. And a lot of people don't do that. But my point is, sometimes if you will it into existence, like, okay, Animation Insider is your website, right? Yeah. Okay, there was no Animation Insider before that. You developed that, and you... True. And so you made that happen. So... Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, there's, I guess really, to directly answer your question, if I was given $1 gazillion, I would make an animated feature. I would make a 2D animated feature. And what it would be about, I have a lot of ideas, but I'm not positive. because I don't want to speculate because it's not going to happen. But
Right.
but I think that's what I would probably do with the money.
Make a 2D animated feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe 3D. I would do. I don't hate 3D. I just would make a feature. I'd like to make
And
an
it would be preferable to be 2D.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Well,
why
if you have all the money in the world, I would rather do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I will say mostly because I don't think that most 2D doesn't really get as crazy as you can as 2D, and with exceptions, and one of them being the third Hotel Transylvania film is the most cartooniest 3D I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's almost too much for me because I like want to rewind it. I can't watch the film. I want to rewind it. How do they do that? That's so cool because they would do things like, you've got like a normal 3D face like we have, normal dimensions and stuff. And then they would make a silly face and it would go totally that flat 2D with the mouth on the side and the eyes on one side of the head.
Right.
Because it was Gendy that did it. So it was all, so it like would go right to Dexter's Lab kind of cartoony stuff. Just gorgeous animation and really nice posing. And you really got a good sense of the cartoony fun of it. And so I think I'd probably do something like that.
Yeah. I mean, he's very gifted. I mean, I like those films.
Yeah.
I like the first one. The first and the second one. I don't think I've seen the third one, but I guess I got to do a little bit of homework there. But
it's worth it. It's worth it. I don't want to say it's a fantastic film, but it's all eye candy to an animator, especially if you like the extreme cartoony animation.
See, I
like the antics are really big, and it's almost like in some ways the pose is as important as what they're saying. I really admire that kind of work.
I like fun animation. And my big problem with some of the animation that's being done today, whether it's 3D or 2D, is it's too weighed down in real life. It's you have this medium where you can really go crazy. You can really go crazy and have a lot of fun, and they don't do it. And
there's not much point in making something animated if it's going to be the same as live action.
Yeah,
For
so
the same
I'm not.
reason that it was silly to make the live action Will Smith film of Aladdin because they didn't change it. We already saw that. Why are you is it just because you want to see that it's cool and live action? I guess, but I don't know.
Right.
It would have been better to make a new one and have it animated.
What'd you think of Encanto?
I didn't see it. I haven't seen any Pixar movie I don't know. The last one I saw, I think I saw Frozen, and I saw the Mitchells versus the Machines. I watched that. I've seen but I haven't seen any Pixar films. I just don't identify with them. They're all for kids, I think, and more than, and like the most recent one was really a coming of age story. And I remember that, but I didn't really struggle as a kid. Like I guess a lot of people do, and especially in animation, because a lot of people were, wallflowers and sitting in the corner, and I was a class clown. So I was not a wallflower.
You weren't introverted. I
was not introverted at all. So I didn't really have any of those experiences and problems. And I understand that and I respect that, but I don't identify with it on such a level. And now I don't really watch animation much anymore anyway, simply because I don't know. My kids are grown, and that's mostly why I watched a lot of it.
Right.
I liked feature animation when it was 2D, and I liked Toy Story, and I liked, a lot of the films that came out. But I just feel like, I know they're not made for me now. They're not made for a 50-something guy.
No, I think
they're made for kids and for the younger generations, and that's not really me. I don't identify with that, so I'm not interested.
I hear you completely. I mean, I think the films are now being engineered, with the big two fingers up, quotes, air quotes. And, I think they're being calculated.
They're formulaic.
Yeah.
And at least in my case, I can see that.
Yeah.
and I don't really like it. The last film that I liked from Disney, I think, was Frozen.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that film, and I enjoyed the songs and all of that stuff. I didn't have a little kid at the time, so I wasn't, I wasn't subjected to Let It Go 5 million times. So I don't have an aversion to it like some parents do, but I really enjoyed that film, and it made me tear up, and I liked that. It's the only ones I can think of.
Yeah.
Oh, there was one with a dead kid, and he went to, like, he lived in, I want to say Mexico, and then it was the Day of the Dead, and he went.
Oh yeah, Coco.
That was a good film.
That was a very good. That was a very good film, and I felt like they actually used the animation medium the way it should be.
Yeah, I think they did a great job with it. I mean, it was a lot of fun just seeing the 3D representations of the Day of the Dead, figures that they make in Mexico. I thought that was really kind of cool. And yeah, like you're saying, it wasn't that realistic. That was a lot of fun. Maybe that's the last Disney film I saw.
I just want to say this. I saw Moana. I like Moana. I thought it was a good movie, and I thought the music was excellent. I thought I couldn't believe Dwayne Johnson was actually singing it. But there's a scene in that movie, and it's little Moana, and she's by the water. And I guess they had an animator. They had one of their traditional 2D animators. They only got like 3 of them working there. I think it was Mark Henn animated this scene by the water where the water kind of comes up. It's kind of a character, kind of comes up and spins her hair.
Yeah.
And
I've seen that.
Yeah. And
the 2D version,
yes. And I looked at that. This was after seeing the movie, and I saw the 2D version of it. And I was like, the animation was fantastic. The 2D animation. I was like, why are they not doing this?
Right.
My big point is all the computer animation, with the exception of maybe Hotel Transylvania and what Gendy's doing, right? Mm-hmm. Which is amazing. All the stuff that all the studios are doing with the 3D animation, it all looks the same way. It all looks identical. It could be, you could interchange DreamWorks or Pixar or
I agree.
And the thing is that you had something so good. You had this perfect team in place. All you had to do was just get some good stories going.
Yep.
And they would be out in front. They would be doing their own thing, and nobody would compare it to anything else, Yeah. And that's the big key in business anyway.
Yeah.
Is, you don't want
Making
to be
your brand.
Yeah, you don't want to be one of the pack. You want to be out front doing your own thing. And
I guess not anymore.
I guess not. I thought it was a stupid move. And I thought that way when they originally got rid of their animation divisions. They got rid of the hand-drawn animation.
That was stupid.
And,
it was stupid.
It was one of the, I said it was a boneheaded move back then, and I still think them not bringing it back and really embracing it is probably one of the worst decisions. They could have enhanced it with computer animation. It would have been great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, like we were saying before, Klaus did that. It was kind of 2.5D. And in some ways it really did look 3-dimensional in places. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they could do. I mean, but I mean, there's some of that stuff was gorgeous. It's funny. You say everything looks the same, and I agree. And it's actually, and maybe some of your listeners might hate me for this, but it's one of the reasons why I hate anime, because it all looks exactly the same. Everybody looks like children, whether or not you're the strongest man on the planet or woman on the planet. I can't tell the difference between whether they are a man or a woman. Right. They all look like elves. They have gigantic eyes, and it all looks exactly the same. And in the way everybody's like, why do you hate that? I love anime. Okay, that's fine. But you put yourself in my shoes. What if every single animated piece ever looked like The Simpsons? Didn't matter what it was. Toy Story looked like The Simpsons. Popeye looked like The Simpsons. Mickey Mouse, Disney, anything you could think of. It all looked like The Simpsons. Mm-hmm. You'd get bored. And I'm bored. Yeah. I'm just bored with it. And I will say that everybody says, well, the stories are great. Doesn't matter. Then I might as well if I turn off the animation, maybe I'd like the story, but then we're talking about radio, and I'm not I've never been able to get into it. There are exceptions. I like Akira. I like everything that Miyazaki did, but that stuff doesn't look like your standard anime.
Right.
And I think it's it's brilliant. It's his own view, his own voice. That's what I want to see. Show me your voice, not show me some, diluted version of what everybody else did 20 years ago. It's just boring. Can we move on? That's why I like Hotel Transylvania, because It's unique. It looks different. It's its own thing.
It's breaking the mold a bit. Yeah. It's big time with the computer animation.
I'm a visual guy, and that's why I got into it. I want to see how they do stuff. Did you ever see that one thing that Gendy did? He did a little, it was like a little piece, little animated test kind of a thing of Popeye. It's 3D, all 3D, done at Sony, but it's that 2.5D flat, and it's just gorgeous. Wow. And they decided not to do it.
Right.
But
is that test on YouTube?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. I don't know what idiot at Sony decided that was a bad choice, but I mean, come on. It was really unique looking, interesting. And I mean, they still say that well, maybe they don't anymore, but when I used to pitch cartoons, one of the things that everybody always said is, especially Disney, was like, we want to make sure that when you switch the channel, you're on Disney Channel. We know you because our style is our style. And Warner Brothers said the same thing. Well, Warner Brothers doesn't care. They'll do anything. But Disney cared about that. And Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, they all kind of said the same thing, where like, we want you to know that this is a Cartoon Network film or series.
Right.
And they largely did that. And then now, I think the problem is that everybody that's coming up now, because those are the people getting shows, they all grew up on the same anime and the same, cartoons that we worked on, and because, and it ends up just being where it's, I don't know. I've seen that. I don't need to see another story about a kid being bullied and how he overcomes that with exactly the same style, but now there's frizzy hair instead of long straight hair. And he has glasses instead of, zits and freckles. It's just, I don't know.
It's a lot of rubber stamping. And then,
yes, I think so. I mean, look, and I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want anybody to, I mean, I'm sure people will disagree with me, but I don't know. Can we try something new? Give me something new. You know what was great? The Spider-Verse.
Yes.
Genius, revolutionary genius.
Yes.
Why aren't people making things like that anymore? That's what we need.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I saw that and I was like, wow. And who greenlit it? Yeah, it was the genius who greenlit it.
Well, Sony seems to be the forefront of animation. I mean, Pixar used to be. Don't care about Pixar, even if they have good stories. I don't feel that they're.
Well, when did Disney take them over?
What? Pixar.
Pixar.
Yeah. I want to say it was early 2000s.
Yeah, it's almost 20 years. So Pixar was this. When they came out of the box, they were just out of the chute. They were just doing this great stuff.
Yeah,
and
it was unique.
Yeah,
and interesting.
So
Toy Story was outstanding.
Right. Monsters Inc. was fun. Monsters Inc. I tell people all the time, some people get angry at me, but I say it's like it reminds me of the Muppets. I look at it and I go, it's
with all the fur and
CG animated Muppet show,
But that was but it had a lot of heart. Mike Wazowski was great with the one giant eye.
Oh, absolutely.
Pixar is revolutionary in what they did. I just feel like they're a little too set in their ways now, and I don't even get far enough to watch the film because I don't like the style anymore. So it doesn't matter. Maybe there's fantastic stories, but I'm just not interested. It doesn't. Yeah,
it's turning you off from the get go.
Yeah,
the first 5. Well, when you watch a movie, it's the first 5 or 10 minutes. You're going to know whether you like the movie or not, and you're just turn it off right away. And there are other people like that. There are other people that do that. I do that. But
well, I mean, think about this. It's one of my favorite sets of characters was the Looney Tunes. So I grew up on that, and I loved them. Loved Bugs Bunny, but I still haven't seen the new Space Jam. Not interested.
Right.
Don't care.
Because
not interested at all.
Because they're shoehorning it into something else. It's a film that you're basically forcing these characters into.
Yeah, and they don't really have the personalities that they do. I mean, Warner Brothers is guilty of doing that a lot. I mean, they've had a lot of iterations of new Bugs Bunny, and I don't really like any of them. I don't really. The new Looney Tunes stuff is nice. That's probably the closest to the originals, just because the animation is really good. They're going for styles that are similar, but the earlier iterations, they did one. I don't remember what it was called, but it was basically Seinfeld. Whatever it is, it's the purple Bugs Bunny. They made him kind of purple gray, and it like he lives in a house, and Daffy lives next door, and people come into the house and they have parties, and it's like, well, what are we doing here? That's not right. Sylvester and Tweety are not pals.
They're not.
They're not supposed to be pals.
They're supposed to be killing each other. That's really
right.
Well, maybe they decide. I guess they decided that. Wait, that doesn't work. That doesn't work.
I get that. That's fine. I get it. But they
I think it still works. I think it still works. I think that's what's happening around you. There are people that don't like other people. There are people that are envious. It's all the human emotions all wrapped up in those characters, and it's real, and and it's kind of like they turn their back to it. Yeah.
Well, they did. I think that Warner Brothers wants to just make money, and they'll pollute whatever they can in order to do that. And I think that they unfortunately do that a lot. There are exceptions, but like Baby Looney Tunes is just vomit. I mean, really? Why would you? So we're going to talk about Bugs Bunny learning? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And that was not made with love. It was made to make money because they already had a Baby Looney Tunes baby clothing line that they turned into a half-hour commercial.
Right. They wanted to feed the brand. I'm going to tell you a story. Do you remember when, were you there at Warner Brothers when they were trying to decide they were going to put out a short, and they were trying to decide if it was going to be Carrot Blanca, and then there was another one that was being developed, and it was about, so Carrot Blanca, they had that because of the anniversary. It was the anniversary of Casablanca.
Yeah.
And then they had this other short, which was Bugs Bunny on ice. It was basically Bugs Bunny with a hockey team. He was the mascot.
I do remember that. I animated some stuff on that. Was Keith Baxter was working on it.
That's right. And it was hilarious. Yeah. I thought it was really fun. And I was like, it was the, I don't even know if I could say, can we say this here now? What do you think? You think it would be?
I don't know. Yeah, sure.
So anyway, it was the Crusher. It was the Crusher, but it was a whole team of Crushers.
Yeah.
And then it was, I don't remember the other team. I don't know if it was, but
I don't remember that. I just remember because he called me and asked me to do a scene as a test, not a test for me, but as part of a Leica reel that he was building to prove and to sell it.
Right.
And my scene was Bugs Bunny blowing a whistle.
Right. It was. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was a great idea.
Yeah,
it was right in there. It could go right into the Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
And so anyway, they made the decision. I think it was made by the head of Warner Brothers. Came down and they pitched both, and we all know what they went with. They went with Carrot Blanca, and you know what the explanation was?
No, because whatever it is, it's dumb.
The explanation was they could sell a lot more cells. They could sell the animation art because all the characters were featured in it. They could sell Bugs Bunny and Pepe Le Pew and
I get that. So why don't they make two? It's Warner Brothers.
They could have made two. They could have made two, but the other thing was Bugs Bunny's in it, but it's mostly the Crusher, and they felt like they couldn't market that. So that's the way decisions get made.
Yeah.
In Hollywood.
Sad.
So, yeah. But I get it, but you could have had this really funny Bugs Bunny cartoon that you could have merchandised too. You could have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it might have propelled more. They did a bunch of 3D Looney Tunes cartoons that I don't believe ever saw the light of day, but I saw them on the server the last time I was at Warner Brothers.
Right.
And they were good, but they were okay, but they really seemed like it was more important to get Wile E. Coyote's fur right than it was, because it was 3D, rather than the stories and what was happening. And all of there was a Roadrunner one, and most of the Roadrunner stuff I saw, I had already seen. They weren't inventing anything new and adding to the characters. They were just rehashing old gags that already existed.
That's what happens.
Yeah,
happens, unfortunately.
I imagine it depends on what your marching orders, and are you allowed to come up with new ideas and whatnot. If you're stuck in the 40s with telling your stories, is a lot that you can't talk about, because like I was saying before, I'm doing these Woody Woodpecker cartoons. If you watch some of those old ones, Woody's impetus is to find a place to sleep at night. He's homeless and he just wants to get something to eat. And he goes to a butcher's shop and the butcher wants to kill him. And it's like that's what those cartoons were about. It was about staying alive, because it was during the Depression and the war and all that stuff. Now we don't really have that, or at least the people working on it aren't that. And the writers usually have a lot of money. So they, like in live action movies, there's always, every time they make a film, it's always about, a couple, and he's an executive at a big record label, and she's a writer working on a sitcom or whatever. It's always about what they know. And
right.
I don't identify with that so much.
No, I think it's funny. Like King of Queens was a great show, and they had a small house in Queens.
Yep, and I enjoyed that.
And Seinfeld, he's in a crappy apartment.
Yeah.
That's the stupidest thing is he's a comedian.
Yeah,
he's a comedian. Yeah. He's living in this crappy apartment in somewhere in Manhattan.
I guess it's before. Yeah, but a crappy apartment in Manhattan is.
Yeah, I mean, he's living across the hall from this lunatic, Kramer, and it's like, would this really happen if he was so successful as a comedian?
Probably not if he was that successful. No, he wouldn't.
But it was refreshing that way.
I also liked Mike and Molly was like that too. He was just a cop.
Yeah,
and she was trying to be a writer.
Yes,
and that was an endearing show. But I think mostly because Melissa McCarthy's adorable. But
yeah, she's very funny.
Yeah,
she did an episode of Saturday Night Live that she completely stole the show from everybody.
Yeah, she did the guy. I don't remember. What was it? It was like Trump's guy. I want to. He like bald. He was all. I'm like, so she was this fat bald guy, yelling at everybody.
Oh, that's right. Sean Spicer.
Spicer, yeah, that was it.
Yeah. That was great.
She came back and did that a couple of times.
Yeah, hilarious stuff. Hilarious stuff. So what would be okay? So one more big, gotcha question. If you could go back in time, if there's anything you could have worked on, if you could take the time machine and go back, is there anything you would have liked to work on?
Yeah, the original Looney Tunes.
Yeah,
absolutely. I would have loved to have worked on one of the teams, Bob McKimson or Chuck Jones. But yeah, to be able to animate on the original cartoons, yes, I would have. Absolutely. I wouldn't even think twice. I mean, really just any of those times, like going back to the times of the Fleischers, that would have been interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And working in one of those studios, or Van Buren, or, at the beginnings of animation. The Disney feature stuff at the beginning. I just really would love to go back in time when I think it was a little simpler and not so corporate. And
right. You just go to work and create cartoons all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Looney Tunes seems to, just from what I heard, because, Terry Tunes was like a sweatshop that was up in New Rochelle.
Yes.
The building's still there, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah, it's like a market. It's a market now. But I parked in the parking lot, took pictures.
Yeah.
But I think the Fleischer building in Manhattan was torn down, but the buildings where after they came back from Florida, studio moved to Florida to evade, they were trying to get rid of the union. And then they moved back, Paramount moved them back, and they were on 45th Street, 44th and 45th Street in Manhattan. And
Fleischer, though.
What was that? Fleischer wasn't
out.
part of it at that point. It was they called it the Famous Cartoon Studio.
Yeah, they threw him out and renamed it.
They renamed it, and there's just a side thing. They did a cartoon in the 50s about a tour with Casper. And it's animated, but they show them the Paramount Cartoon Studios.
Oh, that's cool.
And in the cartoon, it's supposed to take place in California with palm trees, but meanwhile, it was in New York all that time. And I'm trying to remember the point that I was getting to. What were we talking about? I'm talking about.
We were just talking about the old studios and how.
Oh, yeah. And my point here was it seems like the Looney Tunes studio, like in the 40s and 50s, was probably the best to work at, because the executives were kind of like, they would come down, they would kind of check things out, and then they would just disappear.
They were hands off.
Yeah.
That's the way executives should be.
Yeah. And they just did their thing. They did brilliant cartoons. And who's your favorite director?
Chuck Jones.
Yeah. Yeah. Mike Maltese was his his muse, I guess.
I loved the way Chuck draws, and I've always tried to emulate that. And so my first director was Keith Baxter, the guy that did the hockey thing you were talking about.
Yeah, Keith was great.
Yeah, but his favorite was Chuck Jones, and he introduced me to Chuck. And when I first started working for him, he made me redo my scenes 13, 14 times over and over and over again. And every day I would call my dad back in Jersey and say, I think he's going to fire me. He's going to fire me tomorrow. He told me to redo it again. And he was always nice. He wasn't mean about it, but I was not doing the job that he wanted. And I felt I was going to get fired. But over time, he kept, showing me. And I learned how to draw the way he draws, which was the way Chuck Jones draws. And I had a guy come and visit me once. That was he was a sheet timer on Tasmania at the time. His name was Norm McCabe.
Yeah,
he was on Chuck's unit.
Yeah, he was all the way back in the 30s. He was working there. Yeah.
So he came to see me once, holding a whole bunch of my scenes into my, come to my cubicle. He's like, "You Mike Milo?" I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Did you do these scenes?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "I just got to tell you," I said, "this is the closest I've seen to anybody drawing Chuck Jones stuff since I worked with him back then."
Wow.
And, whether he was being nice or kind, he didn't have to come and say that. So that was the greatest compliment anyone's ever given to me, because that man was there. And like I said, going back to your question, I wanted to be there.
Yeah.
Just to be part of that unit in that time and learn under Chuck Jones, because he was a genius. His sense of comedy and his sense of ability with just a little eye, like a little eye turn, just hilarious. The silhouettes that he did, the squash and stretch that he added without making it too cartoony, the staging was just gorgeous. All gorgeous.
There's one thing I tell people when I was teaching classes. I would say, if you ever go into Disney World, study the animatronics.
Yeah.
And I'm the Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yep.
And they'd be like, and they say, well, why? How does that relate? And I said, because they got good poses going on with those animatronics, and they're moving little things, and that's really, you can learn a lot from that.
Absolutely.
Because those were, it was Mark Davis and Bill Justice and all these key animators that were basically designing it and also programming it. And, But Chuck was the master of getting the most out of a pose. The one thing that comes to mind is How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Yeah.
And there's a upshot of the Grinch, and he's just drumming his fingers.
Yes.
And it's only an eye blink, a couple of eye blinks, which is a couple of drawings, and then it's just a repetitive, it's a cycle on the drumming.
Most of it's a held cell, and there's just overlays with the fingers and the eyes. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and it's perfect. It's perfect, and it's a great example of how you can do so little.
Yeah.
With take one good pose, and get some milk out of it.
Yeah.
So,
well, he had to learn that, I think, from television. Once he moved over and started doing, the last in the '60s and whatnot, just before they closed the Warner Brothers doors, which, by the way, the Warner Brothers studios where they made Duck Amuck and all that, that's still there too. The building is still there.
The building is still there. Well, it became the Patty Freeling Studios.
Yeah.
You know about that, right? You know that story? It's a great story.
Yeah. But tell it, because it's a good story.
Yeah, it's when Warner Brothers closed, Frizz Freeling and DePatie, he just passed away.
Dave last week.
Yeah, he just passed away.
Yeah.
And Frizz is long gone, but they decided they were going to set up a studio. They were going to set up their own studio, and an executive at Warner Brothers said, "Well, look, if you want, we're not using the facility, so we'll rent it out to you for like $1 a year."
Wow.
And they had supplies in there. The cameras were in there. There was really no investment.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And they did the Pink Panther.
They did the Pink Panthers. They started off there. They eventually moved out. I guess somebody said, hey, they were making money. They got the contract to do those. And somebody must have woke up and said, okay, you either pay or you get out.
Yeah.
I'm sure that happened because they weren't there. Yeah, they moved to Van Nuys, I think, after that. But
it's amazing. But see, that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I would like to be, is in those old classic times of when that kind of stuff happened. That stuff fascinates. I mean, history in general fascinates me. It always has, and I'm a big history buff and interested in stuff like that. But I really I admire the people that created animation and started this industry that I have spent my whole life being part of now. And it was all just started with some guy who had an idea. Emile Cole, I think, was the first guy.
Right.
And he did in Paris, and he drew on a chalkboard and filmed it frame by frame.
Right.
And made things animate. And what's his name? Who's the Gertie the dinosaur guy? Him.
Oh.
John.
No.
Can't think of his name at the moment.
Winsor McKay. Winsor
McKay. That was it. Yes. Winsor McKay. And I mean, they say that I just read a whole book about the history of animation.
Mm-hmm.
And
J. Stewart Blackton was another one that I think he was doing the.
Yes, he did it too. Yeah, there was a fair amount of them,
mm-hmm.
and it was just amazing. But everybody was always amazed by Winsor McKay because that man would just start at one end and he'd finish a drawing, and he drew all the backgrounds on the same layers, and then he'd do the same thing. He didn't think that I could just put a background behind it. He drew the same damn thing again.
Yeah.
Over and over and over. The background characters while the character's moving. I mean, just to sit and watch that man work would be quite a treat.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, he was pretty amazing, that guy. He was also a showman, apparently. So, because
he was. Yeah, because he did the Gertie the dinosaur live he animated it, filmed it, and then people watched it while he talked to Gertie, and it was all timed so that you knew that, And then he even gave her like an apple in one point. But when the first time they did that, people ran out of the theaters thinking that it was a real dinosaur. They're terrified, which gives you a sense of what people were like back then, and that just fascinating.
Well, that blew people's minds back then.
It did, because you never saw it, and no one ever saw a moving cartoon. That was magic, witchcraft.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was at they have the Museum of the Moving Image, which is in Astoria, Queens, and it's part of the Kaufman Astoria Studio Complex, and they have a whole exhibit of the Muppets. It's a permanent exhibit by the Henson.
Oh, I've heard about that.
Yeah, it's actually it's great. And
Sure.
and they got stuff from Dark Crystal and Labyrinth and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But they have an animation section. And so they have the penny machines where you could actually, the peep show machines where
Nickelodeon, I believe it was called.
And Nickelodeon, well, that's where they had these things. Yeah, I was just explaining that to somebody. And you can go in there, and they had all the devices, all the primitive, the early devices, like the I don't even know the name.
Zoetrope.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
They had that, and they even had workstations over there. I mean, they had all those machines over there. They had the early projectors there. They had just really incredible, plus props and So
stuff's amazing.
Yeah,
that history. I mean, I just really can't get enough of that.
Yeah.
Little things like, I don't know if you ever remember, there was one cartoon, Bugs Bunny cartoon. It was actually Porky and Daffy, and Porky gets in a car and he drives down, in Burbank, like down Olive Street in 1934. And it's all live action, and he's turning corners, and he's in his little buggy. And
you ought to be in pictures.
That's it. Yes.
That's
I love that. I watch it over and over again just because I want to see what Burbank looked like.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I love that old history kind of stuff. It's
yeah. So, any last words? Anything you want to talk about, or to wrap it up? Or
no, the only thing I can say is for anybody that's looking to get into animation, number one thing you should remember is to save your money, because it's feast and famine.
I think it's also good that you're able to do a bunch of different things.
I have never said no to a job, whether I could do it or not. It doesn't matter. Because
you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. Look, what's the worst that could happen? You spend a week and they tell you, no, you don't have it. But that's never happened to me.
Right.
I did figure it out. There's always somebody that's willing to help you a little bit, somebody that's willing to guide your hand, because whether or not you know that job, you may not know how they do it. Everybody thinks that the way they do things is special and it's the right way to do things. So you're going to have to learn on the job no matter what.
That's right.
And that's where you really learn things. And so, yeah, I would say without a doubt, somebody offers you a job, just take it, and then wing it and see if it works. It probably will.
The worst thing is you'll get fired.
Right. And that's a good experience too.
Or the other worst thing is they promote you.
Yes. Yeah, which happens.
Do you have any questions or comments about the podcast? Please email Brian at Cartoonerific.com. Your email may be featured in one of our future shows.
Well, that's just about it for us today. Thank you, Mike Milo, for a wonderful interview. We hope to have Mike back in the future. Next week, the one, the only, Kyle A. Carrozza will be with us, and he'll be talking about Mighty Magiswords and some of the other projects he's worked on over the years. So if you really like what you hear and you're listening every week, please recommend us to a friend. That would be the highest compliment ever. If you could just recommend us to a few people you think they might enjoy the podcast, or subscribe to the podcast. If you haven't already done that, it's a great way of keeping up to date with all the new episodes. We upload new episodes every Thursday night. We were saying that we were doing it, Friday, but we're actually uploading these things a little bit early so that they reach all the services by Friday. You can subscribe, or you can leave a review. If you really like what you're hearing, let other people know. It's really important, and I would appreciate deeply. So anyway, look, I want you all to have a great day. I want you to have a terrific week, and we hope to see you back next time. Thank you for tuning in.
This has been a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
The Cartoonerific podcast is copyright 2024 by Cartoonerific Studios Incorporated. All rights reserved.